My husband Ryan and I bought our first home when we thought we hit the jackpot. It was in a great neighborhood, the kind with tree-lined streets and well-kept lawns. We got it for an unbelievable price too, as Ryan's uncle was a local real estate agent in the area, and everything seemed perfect at first. We spent the first few days unpacking, setting up our new place, and just enjoying the fact that we finally had a house to call our own. The neighbors seemed friendly enough. A few came by to introduce themselves, and we felt like we were going to fit right in. A few days after moving in, we decided to go out for dinner. When we got back, our next-door neighbor, Mr. Thompson, was standing outside our house. He looked kind of concerned, which immediately made me anxious. He approached us as we got out of the car and said, "I don't want to alarm you two, but while you were out, I noticed your garage door kept opening and closing by itself. It went on for almost an hour, and then it just stopped right before you pulled up." Ryan and I exchanged a look. We hadn't set up any automatic timers or anything, so we had no idea what could have caused it. We thanked Mr. Thompson and went inside to check things out. As soon as we walked in, I felt something was off. The house was quiet, too quiet, and there was this weird feeling like we weren't alone. But the thing that really freaked us out the most was when we went into the dining room. All of our chairs were gone. 8 chairs that had been around the table just hours before were now missing. Our first thought was that we'd been robbed. We started panicking and were about to call the police when Ryan suggested we check the rest of the house first to see if anything else was missing. So we went room to room, looking for any signs of a break-in. But the weird thing was, nothing else was disturbed. The TV, our laptops, jewelry, all still there. When we finally made our way upstairs, I almost lost it. The dining room chairs were stacked neatly in the middle of our bedroom, like someone had just carried them up there and arranged them. There was no sign of forced entry, no explanation for how or why they were moved. We stood there in silence, just staring at the chairs, trying to make sense of what we were seeing. We did not end up calling the police because we honestly couldn't tell if this was a break-in or just a prank. The next morning, Ryan left for work early, and I decided to take a shower before starting my day. I was still rattled from the night before, so I locked the bathroom door, something I usually never do. As I was rinsing off, I got that same eerie feeling that I had when we came home the previous night. It was like I could feel someone watching me. I turned around to look at the shower curtain and noticed a dark figure standing behind it. My heart nearly stopped. I thought it was Ryan. Maybe he'd come back because he forgot something. I called out his name, but there was no response. With my heart pounding, I reached out and yanked the shower curtain back. No one was there. The bathroom was empty, and the door was still locked. I could feel my hands shaking as I grabbed the phone to call Ryan. When he picked up, I asked him if he'd come back home for any reason. He sounded confused and said he'd been at work the whole time. I spent the rest of the day feeling like I was going crazy. I tried to convince myself that it was just my nerves and being paranoid. But deep down, I knew something was wrong with that house. We lived there for another year, but I never felt comfortable. We had other strange things happen. Lights flickering, cold spots in certain rooms, that kind of thing. But nothing as intense as those first few days. When we refinanced a year later, we sold the place. We did not even think twice about moving out. I've never looked back, and I'll never forget how relieved it felt when we finally handed in our keys. When we moved into our new house, It felt like everything was finally falling into place. It was a fantastic location and had the kind of friendly neighbors who actually waved at you when you drove by. The school district was one of the best in the area, which was a huge relief for us since we have 2 kids. Plus, the house itself was practically perfect. A spacious backyard, a beautiful in-ground pool, and just the right amount of space for our growing family. We moved in at the beginning of summer, which seemed like perfect timing. The kids were thrilled about the pool, and my husband and I were excited to finally be in a place that felt like home. And everything was great at first. The kids spent their days playing outside, and we hosted a few pool parties to get to know the neighbors. But after a couple of weeks, we started noticing something strange. Every morning, when I would go outside to have my coffee, the gate to the pool would be wide open. We always made sure to close and lock it at night, especially because we did not want the kids to go near the pool without us. At first, I thought maybe one of the kids had been sneaking out there early in the morning, but when I asked them, they both denied it. They seemed genuinely confused when I brought it up. My husband thought maybe it was the wind, but that did not really make sense to me. The gate was heavy, and it latched securely. I let it go for a while, thinking it wasn't a big deal. But then other things started happening. One night I was cleaning up the kitchen after dinner. It was late, and the kids were already in bed. As I was wiping down the counters, I heard something that made me stop. A sound like kids laughing, coming from the direction of the pool. My first thought was that my son had snuck out of bed and was playing outside. But when I looked out the window, there was no one there. The pool was still, the water calm under the moonlight, but the laughter lingered in the air for just a second longer before fading away. I checked the kids' room, and they were both fast asleep. I did not want to wake them up, so I let it go, thinking maybe I was just too tired. But the next morning, I found wet footprints on the patio, leading from the pool to the back door. The odd thing was, they were small, like a child's, but not the size of either of my kids' feet. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe some neighbor kids had been outside earlier and I just hadn't noticed. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The worst night came about a week later. It was around 2 a.m. when our daughter woke us up, her little voice trembling as she stood by our bed. She said there was a girl outside her bedroom door, asking her to come swim in the pool. My heart sank. I asked her what the girl looked like, and she just shrugged, saying she looked normal, like a kid from school. My husband and I exchanged a look, and that was the moment we decided that we needed to do something. We're both Catholic, so we called our priest the next morning. We explained what had been happening, and though he did not seem surprised, he agreed to come over and bless the house. He walked through each room, saying prayers and sprinkling holy water, finishing last at the pool. And after he left, we both felt a little lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Since then, everything's been quiet. No more open gates, no more laughter, no more footprints. It's like whatever was there is now gone. The kids are back to playing by the pool during the day, and I don't have that uneasy feeling anymore when I walk into the backyard. I'm not really sure what was going on, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to know. I'm just glad it's over. When we moved into the new house, I knew it wasn't exactly the nicest neighborhood, but my parents were doing the best that they could. With 7 of us, 4 kids, 2 parents, and my grandma, finding a place that fit within our budget was tough. The house was big enough, but you could tell it had seen better days. The paint was peeling, and the lawn was a mess. but it was ours, and we were going to make it work. I'm a night owl, and as soon as the internet was set up, I spent most of my nights gaming on my PlayStation. I'm a die-hard Call of Duty fan in case anyone cares. Anyway, the house was still unfamiliar to me, and every little creak and groan would catch my attention. I didn't think much of it though. Old beat-up houses make noises. That's normal. The first night though, something strange happened. I was playing my video games late, maybe around 1 in the morning. I don't know what made me do it, but I got this weird feeling and felt like I needed to look out my window. I shrugged it off at first, but that feeling just wouldn't go away. So I got up and pulled back the curtains. There, standing in our backyard, was our next door neighbor. He was just standing there, staring up at the house. He wasn't doing anything, not moving, just standing still and looking at the house. My first thought was that he must have lost something, maybe a pet. But then I noticed he wasn't really looking for anything. He was just staring. I did not know what to do. I mean, what do you do? It was creepy, but he wasn't doing anything wrong. So I went back to my game and tried to forget about it. The next night, the same thing happened. It was around the same time, and I got that same weird feeling again. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't, so I looked out the window. This time, it wasn't just the guy. His wife was with him, and they were both standing there, just staring at the house. Now I was really freaked out. Who does that? But again, they weren't doing anything, so what could I do? I chalked it up to them being a couple of weirdos and tried to move on. By the third night, I was already on edge when I started playing Call of Duty. I kept glancing over at the window, waiting for that feeling to hit. And sure enough, it did. I did not want to look, but I had to. When I pulled back the curtain, I saw the neighbor, his wife, and now their daughter too. All three of them were just standing there, staring at our house. I could not let this slide anymore. I was convinced they were planning something, like they were plotting to kill us or something crazy like that. I ran downstairs to wake up my parents, but when they came to look, the neighbors were gone. Just like that, no sign of them. After that, I decided I wasn't going to look out the window anymore. I started closing the blinds before I played, and I made sure to double check them before I go to bed. And I didn't tell my siblings because I did not want to scare them, and my parents just shrugged it off. They probably thought I was imagining things or being paranoid. 6 months later, I noticed the neighbors had moved out. One day they were just gone. No moving truck, no goodbye, nothing. I couldn't have been happier to see them go. And even now, I can't explain what that was all about. Maybe they were just weird people. Maybe there was something else going on that I'll never understand. All I know is that I've never been so freaked out in my life. And I'm not sure I'll ever get that image out of my head. The three of them standing there in the dark, staring up at our house like they were waiting for something to happen. When I got the promotion at work, I figured it was time to upgrade my living situation. I found this apartment in Queens, New York. The place wasn't huge, but it was a big step up from the tiny studio that I used to rent. I was excited about it. New place, new start, you know? On my first day of moving in, I met one of my neighbors, an older lady named Nina. She was probably in her late 60s, with gray hair tied back in a neat bun. She introduced herself right away, offering me a tray of cookies. "Welcome to the building," she said with a smile that felt a bit too wide. I thanked her, took the cookies, and tried to make some small talk. She seemed nice enough, just a bit lonely maybe. And at first, Nina seemed like the kind of neighbor you'd want. She'd always smile when she saw me and would ask how I was settling in. But soon, things started to get weird. She would knock on my door late at night, sometimes past midnight, just to check in. She would say she heard a noise and wanted to make sure I was okay. At first I did not mind this. Maybe she was just looking out for me. But it started happening more and more frequently, and I began to feel uncomfortable. One night, I was lying in bed when I heard a clicking sound at my front door. It was well past midnight at this point, and the noise was quite alarming. I got up quietly and tiptoed to the door. The clicking continued, and I looked through the peephole and saw Nina standing there with a screwdriver, fiddling with my lock. My stomach dropped. I yanked the door open and saw her standing there, looking surprised but not apologetic. "Nina, what the hell are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but I could hear the edge in it. She gave me this strange smile, almost like she was caught doing something silly and not completely inappropriate. "Oh, I just wanted to make sure you were okay," she said. "I thought maybe you were locked in." I was at an absolute loss for words. "It's like 1 a.m., Nina. Go home," I finally managed to say, and she turned and shuffled back to her apartment without another word. And I stood there for a moment, still holding the door open, trying to process what had just happened. After that night, I started avoiding Nina. I did not want to make things awkward, but I also didn't want her trying to break into my apartment in the middle of the night again. Whenever I saw her in the hallway, I would just nod and keep walking. She did not try to talk to me anymore, which was a relief. A few weeks passed and I thought things were back to normal. But one morning, I woke up to the police and an ambulance outside the building. I found out later that Nina had died. They said she drank a full bottle of Windex. The whole thing felt surreal. I did not know what to think. The next day, though, a police officer came by to talk to me. He said they found a note that Nina had left behind. He showed it to me, and I felt like the ground had dropped out from underneath me. The note was handwritten, shaky but legible. It said something along the lines of, "He reminded me so much of my late husband. I wanted to be with him, but I know I can't. So I'm going to join my husband in heaven." The officer asked if I knew what she was talking about, but I was too stunned to respond. My mind raced back to all those late night visits and the screwdriver at my door. I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't know I reminded her of anyone, let alone her dead husband. I still live in that same apartment, but it doesn't feel the same anymore. I can't stop thinking about Nina and how she died. I feel guilty, even though I did not do anything wrong. But the whole thing just left me with this awful feeling, like maybe there was something I could have done to prevent it. I've been a real estate agent for over 10 years, and I've seen my fair share of strange clients. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened with this one guy. It all started when I was listing a house in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. The kind of place where the homes easily go for $3 million or more. This particular property was a beautiful mansion, newly renovated, and I had no doubt that it would sell quickly. Then, this wealthy man reached out to me. He owned several businesses and was clearly loaded. He was very eager to see the property, and when I showed it to him, he was instantly in love with it. I mean, he was obsessed. He kept saying, "This is it. This will be my forever and final home." It was strange how certain he was, but I chalked it up to him just being enthusiastic. We walked through the house a couple of times, and each time he seemed more convinced that this was the place for him. He did not hesitate to agree to the asking price, which is rare in this market. The only thing left was the appraisal, and then we could move forward with the sale. The appraisal was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I arrived about 10 minutes early, as I always do, to make sure everything was in order. The appraiser showed up right on time, but my client was nowhere to be seen. I figured he was running late, so I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I wasn't too worried at first. It happens. I told the appraiser to go ahead and do his job, and I'd relay the information to my client later. We went inside, and everything seemed normal at first. The appraiser started his work, checking out the kitchen and the living room. But then, as we made our way upstairs, we noticed something was wrong. The door to the master bedroom was slightly ajar. I remember getting this anxious feeling in my gut, but I pushed it aside and opened the door all the way. That's when we saw him. My client was hanging from the ceiling, a thick rope around his neck. His face was blue, and his eyes were bulging. I froze in fear. I've never seen anything like this before. The appraiser, who was normally a pretty calm person, was visibly shaken. I don't even remember how long we stood there in shock before I finally snapped out of it and called 911. When they arrived, they questioned both of us, took our statements, and cordoned off the house. I couldn't stop thinking about how he kept saying this was going to be his forever home. It felt like he knew what he was going to do from the start. A few days later, I got a call from one of the detectives handling the case. Apparently, the guy had been in deep financial trouble. Despite his wealth and businesses, he owed a ton of money, way more than he could ever hope to pay off. The detective said they found several notes in his car parked outside his place, all saying the same thing: "I can't do this anymore." It was clear that the stress had gotten to him. He must have seen this house as his final escape, a place where he could end everything on his own terms. It was horrible. I still think about it sometimes, especially when I'm alone in a house with a client. I guess you really never know what someone's going through, no matter how successful they seem to be on the outside. I had to take the listing down immediately, of course. The house eventually sold a few months later, but I'll never forget what happened in there. It's the kind of thing that sticks with you, you know. Before I begin, here's a bit of background. I recently moved into a small house in Nevada. It's a modest place, nothing fancy, but it's all I could afford after my divorce. The divorce was messy, and I've been trying to rebuild my life. Moving to a quiet town seemed like the right step, a fresh start and all that. So, recently I was out mowing the lawn. It was peaceful, the kind of mundane task that lets your mind wander, especially after a stressful divorce. I was halfway done when the mower suddenly made this weird grinding noise, like it hit something hard. I stopped and turned off the mower to check what it was. There, tangled in the blades, was a bone. It wasn't like a small chicken bone or anything. It was bigger, more substantial, maybe from a dog or something. It kind of annoyed me and I just threw it away. I tossed it in the trash, figuring it was just something a stray dog left behind or something. Later that evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner. It was getting dark out and I had the lights on in the house. My kitchen window faces the backyard, and I hadn't bothered to put up any curtains yet, so it was like a big, open screen to the night outside. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. I ran to see what had happened and saw a bone lying on the kitchen floor. The same bone I'd found earlier. The same one that I threw away. I was sure of it. My first thought was that some kids were playing a prank on me. Maybe they fished it out of the trash and threw it through the window as a joke. But as I looked through the broken glass, I saw something. There, standing just outside the light from the kitchen, was a girl. She was standing in the shadows, her head tilted at an odd angle, just staring. I couldn't make out her face clearly, but I could see her eyes glinting in the darkness. And I was pissed. My adrenaline kicked in and I flung the door open, ready to shout at her. But when I got outside, she was gone. Just like that. No trace of her anywhere. I checked the backyard, even the side of the house, but she was just gone. The next day, I started asking the neighbors if they knew anything about the girl, or if they'd seen anything strange last night. Most of them seemed genuinely clueless. They said they hadn't noticed anything weird, and did not know of any girls fitting the description that I gave. But one older woman down the street gave me this strange look when I mentioned the bone. She did not say much, just told me to be careful, which obviously did not help my nerves. I did some digging online, and eventually found some old records on the property. Turns out, a little girl had died here years ago. I don't know the exact details, but she was buried on the property somewhere. There's no gravestone or anything that I've seen, but it's just unsettling. Look, I don't believe in ghosts or any of that paranormal stuff. I never have. But there's something off about this place. And I keep telling myself that it's just my mind playing tricks on me. Or maybe someone's messing with me because I'm the new guy in town. But who would go to that extent and shatter my window? And who was that girl I saw standing in my backyard? I'm hoping this is just some elaborate prank, and I can laugh about it later over beers. If I find out anything else, I'll post an update. Hey, what's up guys? It's Spooky. If you've made it this far, congratulations, you survived. If you did not know, I have an Instagram. Follow me on there so we can connect. And I also have a Patreon. On there, you'll have direct access to me and can see the upcoming videos, polls, and soon-to-be exclusive stories only shared on there. If that's something that interests you, please consider joining. That's all I have for you guys tonight. Stay spooky, and I'll see you in the next video.